the turning point, and I talk about this in my book and the documentary, was there was a riot that happened at my high school between the Puerto Ricans and the black kids, right?
Okay.
And they were afraid that this would spill over to, into more fights and someone getting really hurt. Someone actually got stabbed.
Wow.
So they were afraid that this was like a war between the Latin Kings and a black gang in the school and things like that. So they brought this group of mediators into the school to do conflict resolution. So they separated the black kids from the Puerto Rican kids to do this mediation, and they didn't know my ethnicity, right? So they had no idea. They're like, this guy could be Puerto Rican, it could be black, we don't know, right? But we know he's involved in the in this situation somehow, right? So I came into school, and I remember I got pulled into the office, and everyone's looking at this list of names to figure out where they're supposed to go. And I was like, what list am I going to be on, right? And so this is the funny piece, right? We talk about we talked about diversity training and things like that. Is my name was actually on both lists. So I was like, so they decided, they're like, well, we're gonna put them both in the list of Puerto Ricans and the list of black kids at the same time, right? Right. So so it was I didn't funny thing is I didn't think about it. I was like, okay, whatever, right? And I was friends, like I knew both groups, like I was very close with both groups. I'm still close with a lot of those guys I went to school with.
Okay.
So when I walked in with the mediation group that the black kids were involved in, no one was like, hey, he doesn't belong here. I was like, hey, I just came right in. And the same thing with the Puerto Ricans. It was like, hey, come on in, right? But the funny thing was, I got a chance to hear both sides of the story that no one else did, right?
So cool.
And I actually helped mediate.
I was gonna say, like, you're the natural mediator here. They should have hired you.
Yeah, because they were allowed to share their experience and vent their frustration in this space, but the space was still isolated within their ethnic group. So the other group didn't hear what was happening. They didn't, and come to find out, it was over a girl. Like, a fight happened over a girl, and then because it looked like this black kid against this Puerto Rican kid and a few other Puerto Rican kids that were related, right? Like, this is not a gang thing. They were family. They jumped in, and then a group of black kids saw what was happening. So they thought it was a bunch of Puerto Rican kids taking advantage of this black kid. So they jumped in, and that escalated, right? So I was able to go back and forth between this group and kind of smooth things out. Was like, yo, did you realize you guys fighting over a girl? Like it's not that big of a deal, right? and help to de-escalate it.
Wow.
But but Willie Dardell was in one of the mediation group.
Okay.
And he was asking various questions, and one of the questions he had was, when do drug dealers make the most money? Right. So he asked this very serious question because, we're talking about drug dealing. We're talking about the community. We're talking about all this illegal activity that was happening in various neighborhoods. And he just asked this question that was a part of a larger conversation. Right. Mm-hmm. So when he asked that question, I thought it was funny. I took it as a joke.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
First off, I know the answer, because I was involved in some shady stuff, right? but to age myself, this is also the same time Bone Thugs and Harmony had put out the song Month, right?
Yeah.
So I actually sang it. I was like, I know the answer. It's the first of the month. Wake up, get up. It's the first of the month. So I started singing it. And everyone starts laughing except Mr. Dardell. Like, he was livid.
I'm sure he was. It's like,
he was pissed, right? And he scolded me. Like, he scold me. He was like, "How dare you? Like,
Wow.
how dare you laugh at this?"
Yeah.
Right?
It's
And
rough.
I've never been scolded by a man that I respected. Right?
Yeah.
I've been scolded by teachers, I've been scolded by officers, and but this was a guy that I respect. This was a guy I saw as a father figure. So when he scolded me, I shut up like right away. Like I took it serious. Like like it was no longer playtime, right? So then he goes, explain
Yeah.
to me, explain to me, why do drug dealers make the most money, at the first of the month, right? You still there?
Yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So then I go, it's because, people get their welfare checks, they get their, social security money, they get all this money, and they spend it on crack, right? They spend it on heroin, they spend it whatever, right? So
Yep.
that's why you make the most money, at the
Yep.
first of the month.
Yep.
And he goes, let me ask you another question, right? So now he's no longer talking to the rest of the group. He's talking to me now, right? Because he
Yeah.
knows what I'm doing. He knows what I'm involved in. And he goes, let me ask you another question. Do you like kids? And that like was out of the blue. Like, what do you mean I like kids? Like, what is this? Where's this going? Right? And he goes, I'm being serious, right? Like, I see you take care of your siblings,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, you are a responsible guy.
Yeah.
I see how you interact with little kids in the community, because I did stuff at the Boys and Girls Club and things like that, right? Um, so he goes, so what do you think about little kids? And I go, I have no problem with little kids. I love little kids, right? Like yeah, you know me. I do take care of my siblings, and and I'm at the park playing basketball with little kids all the time, right?
Yeah.
And then he goes, well, let's go back a little bit, right? Let's just put this in context. So if you're saying that these mothers, these fathers are spending all of their money in the first of the month, and we know that that includes all their food stamps, right? That includes the money that's supposed to go to the utility bills, to go to clothes, to go to these things. What happens to that child for a month,
Yeah. Not gonna eat,
right?
right? Yeah.
Right. So as he's saying this and he's putting in context, all I could do was imagine myself as this runaway kid, right? That was hungry, that was homeless, that was, didn't have anyone to look after me. And then I also, just imagine all these little kids that I used to see out in the middle of the streets wandering, right? Like, where are their parents, right?
Yeah.
And realize, like realizing that I am contributing to this.
Yeah.
Like I'm contributing to this misery, to their misery, right?
And you
And
did
I'm
that, right? I mean, you were on the streets, right? You were without a home. You felt that pain.
yeah. So when he did this and put it in context, man, I just started crying. I remember I was crying in front of everybody. Like I was crying in front of him. I was crying in front of my friends. And I just didn't care anymore. I was just bawling. And then I left, and it changed me. Like I went cold turkey. Like I didn't want to be involved in hanging out with my friends late nights, and I didn't go to the clubs anymore. I didn't sell anymore. I didn't do any of these things, and I just became really focused in school.
Wow.
Right, so it was a big turning point for me.
Thank God you have a good heart, man. You have a good heart, and you had somebody around who could touch that heart, and focus your energy on something more productive, So do you think that's like a major part of like what gave you that focus and determination to pursue education at that point? Or were
No,
there
it was, Nicholas Poulos was the person that helped me, that helped motivate me and inspire me to pursue higher education, right?
okay.
He allowed me to enjoy learning, right?
Mm,
Willie Dardell put me on a straight path, right?
mm.
With him was about manhood and role, being a man, understanding my role and responsibilities in society, right? Knowing that I have a responsibility, that my father lost his life to help create me, and I need to do better.
That's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.